Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name's StepsBasic, and welcome back to my community show. So, who's ready to talk about philosophy things again for today? Yep, that's right. I got another topic for you, and I did want to talk about today. I want to talk about paradoxes, and I thought this was an interesting topic because it's one of my favorite little thingies in philosophy. And of course, anyone who's a fan of sci-fi or fantasy or stuff, superheroes, you've heard of paradoxes before, and you know what they are. You've heard of them. You'll love them or hate them, depending. But there's also some that apply in real life and whatnot. And of course, when we're talking about time travel, we're going to be talking about the specific one, like the grandfather paradox. Basically amounts to somebody killed your grandpa, so you want to travel back in time to kill the person who killed your grandpa, so he doesn't die. Unfortunately, in doing so, you thus negate your reason for creating time travel, and therefore it no longer exists. Therefore, if you don't have a reason to create time travel, then you haven't created time travel to go back in time to stop the thing that created your then causal loop and explosion. Universe is gone. You're dead. Then, of course, there are a lot of different forms of paradoxes. I'm going to be talking about a few of them in this one. So bear in mind, being that this is a listicle of sorts, that because I'm doing that, I won't be deep diving into very many of them, other than to kind of talk about what they are and where they came from, sort of, maybe not, but that sort of thing. And briefly touch on them. But if you want me to go more in depth into any particular one, then feel free to let me know, because that might be a fun little series to do, just talking specifically about paradoxes, a specific paradox per video, because that could be fun. I really like paradoxes and philosophy, as you've come to know about me. So anyway, that was the grandfather paradox. There's also the causal loop paradox, which is kind of I don't even know if it's really considered a paradox, but it's like, you travel back in time to do something, and then find out that you had to travel back in time to do that thing for that thing to ever happen. I.e., how's it work? Yes. I think it started with a Beethoven thing. It was like you're listening to this song. It's like your favorite song in the world, written by Johann Sebastian Bach or Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. One of them two. Pick one. I'll go with Beethoven because that's who I started with. But it's your favorite Beethoven song, right? You hear it, you listen to it, you love it, and then you're like, I'm going to invent time travel. I'm going to go back in time, and I'm going to meet Mr. Beethoven and listen to the song as he first played it, because I want to see what it was like originally. And so you travel back in time to the time when it was supposed to be, composed, and then you find out, and you're sitting there, and it's like, the song doesn't exist. He never wrote this song. So what do? You give him the song, and therefore, as he's playing the song, you travel back to the future where you come from, so you can hear the song again. But in that case, it comes to who wrote the song, because you brought the song to him, who played it, and then you heard it in the future, and then you brought it back to him again, and it's a causal loop. Because did I make this, or there's a bit more that goes into it. I can't remember it right off the top of my head, but that's basically what it is. It's like you travel back in time to give him the song, which is his song, and then you love it in the future, and you create the loop, and you have to be the one who brings him the song every time. And it's like, but then, the question always comes up, like, who wrote this song then? It wasn't him, and it wasn't me, because I just love the song. It makes your brain go fuzzy when you think about it too hard. I wrote down a few of them that I wanted to talk about. There's some that are, like, really, like, cast off, like the list paradox, which is kind of funny. A list of all the lists has to have a list, or has to have that list on the list, otherwise it's an incomplete list. So if you write a list of lists, then the list has to contain that list, and you say list a bit too much, but that's basically what that one amounts to. Possibly one of my favorite ones, and they used it in WandaVision, and I was like, I like this. The ship of Theseus. The ship of Theseus paradox being, so you got the ship, right? It belongs to a fellow named Theseus. And so you start stripping off parts of it and replacing it and repairing it over the years. because, boards get damaged and whatnot. You take the parts off and replace it, and then after a few times of doing this, all of a sudden every part of the ship of Theseus is brand spanking new. So is it still the ship of Theseus? And then you take all those parts that you pulled off of it and you rebuild the ship to its exact specifications. So now is that the ship of Theseus, or is this the ship of Theseus? And it's, oh my God, which one is the right one? And are they both, or neither, or all of them? And of course, like the answer to this question is, of course, whichever one you call the ship of Theseus is the ship of Theseus, right? But it's more in the name than the actual thing. But at the same time, it makes you think about it. Like, we humans, we recycle our cells every 7 days. And it's like, so every 7 days, we're a brand new person. Is it days or years? I don't remember. But we recycle our cells and we replace and replenish everything in our entire bodies. At one point, all of our cells are brand new, so to speak. And so are we a different person, or are we the same person but with different cells? And it's like, yeah, basically. Let's see. The bootstrap paradox, that's one we're probably all familiar with, because we constantly hear people always saying, pick yourself up by your bootstraps. Little do they know is that phrase actually came from a person making fun of the idea, because one cannot simply lift themselves up by their own bootstraps. It's impossible. It's like trying to lift yourself up by your chin. I can pick myself up. No, I can't. I'm too heavy. Could you imagine if you were actually strong enough to lift yourself up by your own head? That's strange. Probably a more, controversial one that we have in today's society especially is really applicable is the tolerance paradox. Now, I heard of this one probably about 5-6 years ago. I don't exactly know where it came from originally, but the tolerance paradox is like, if you want to build a perfect tolerant society, then you have to tolerate intolerance. And of course, when we're like, oh, you can't do that. You're going to want to be tolerant. You don't want to have intolerance in your society. But at the end of the day, you have to be intolerant of intolerance. Therefore, you have to tolerate intolerance. You have to tolerate intolerance for intolerance. Because if you don't, then you're allowing it to go. And therefore, your perfect tolerant society can never exist. Because you're tolerating people being intolerant. And there you go. And unfortunately, it's the sort of thing that you think about. It's like, yeah, in order to allow a society to be perfectly tolerant, you have to allow for some intolerance. Otherwise, you yourself must be intolerant. And therefore, that builds on the idea of, like, how does one justify their hatred or dislike for something. And this happens in a lot of different ways, which is kind of sad, but let's put it in a more calm context. I.e., if we look at Dungeons and Dragons, it's an old game, and people like me have played it for years. Unfortunately, I'm one of those people who really likes other people coming in and playing it and getting experience for it, and I still like 3.5 better, but I've tried 5th edition and it's not bad. It's okay. Not as good as 3.5 because I'm a stubborn, stodgy old man. I am not going to be one of those people to tell you that you are not a real D&D player because you didn't start at 1st edition or 2nd edition or advanced D&D or 3.5 or anything else. I'm not going to be one of those type of people. Those types of people do exist, though, and that's unfortunate because we should all be happy to welcome new people into our hobbies and our fun and whatnot. Because the more people there are playing, the more people you can play with, right? You understand? But that leads to gatekeeping. Not my opinion, but the opinion of people who are like, if you play 5th edition, then you're not a real D&D player. You didn't play 1st edition, then you're not a real D&D player. That leads to gatekeeping, and unfortunately, that exists. But in our society of Dungeons and Dragons, we don't want gatekeepers in our society. So we're like, hey, keep your gatekeeping out of my Dungeons and Dragons, right? You are gatekeeping Dungeons and Dragons by telling gatekeepers they cannot gatekeep. You understand what I mean? And by establishing rules and stuff against this sort of thing, then you are essentially doing that which of you hate, that of which you hate. You know what I mean? But it is a necessary evil to gatekeep that sort of behavior out of the society of, well, people who like the game, because it ultimately detracts from the atmosphere, and it kills the vibe, and it makes it less fun to play if there are people around who are being all stodgy and stupid about it. You know what I mean? So, the tolerance paradox, ladies and gentlemen. It's confusing, but it's true. Can I kill the monster without becoming the monster? I cannot. Therefore I shall be the monster. And I will say, no gatekeepers in my hobbies, as I gatekeep you. But anyway, those are a list of paradoxes. Obviously, there's more paradoxes. You know, as we live and breathe, paradoxes are created and destroyed. That's always fun. But let me know if there's any of those you'd like me to go deep into. I might just do it anyway, because it could be fun. But anyway, apart from all that, announcements. My health sucks. I was wanting to give you guys a little bit of an update on my health for a while, but there's not really been much of an update. My blood pressure stabilized at good for a solid week, and then just started climbing back up until the point where I almost died. It was great. I've been on medicine, but the medicine was affecting my potassium, which really drained me last week, and I didn't have like the energy to do much of anything, which is funny because I actually got a couple of extra videos out last week. Woo. But I'm kind of on the mend on that. They got me on a lower dose of that medicine, so we're waiting to see if that'll help to improve my stability and whatnot. Apart from that, we're almost done with Bounty of Blood. I don't know how much farther we got, but a couple more videos at most, and then we get to start on the last DLC of Borderlands 3. They were almost done, and in the meantime, I'm still working on the Demon Souls videos with an S. I kind of want to get them all together before I start publishing them, because that way, you know, get them all out, or I don't get any of them out, sort of thing. Apart from that, also working on Cube Escape, and yeah, that's it. No more announcements for you unless something comes up in the meantime. But apart from all that, that's going to be it for me for today. Thank you all so much for joining me for this episode of the Community Show. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go and poke that like button for me. If you'd like to see more from me, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And of course, as always, you're more than welcome to leave a comment down in the comment section down below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. When I can, if I can, you know all that jazz. And tune in next time. My face is itchy. For another topic another time. And until then, good night.